We're getting into the topic of hunger, and we previously reviewed the difference between hunger and appetite. So let's take a closer look at hunger. There's a physical reaction, there's a physical response. It's also psychological, but your body is reacting, your body is signaling to you, and you're feeling its own responses to lack of food. Now, my question for you is, when was the last time you were hungry? And what I mean by that is, in America and in the world we live in the culture, it's so easy to only experience very shallow levels of hunger. Have you ever allowed yourself, when you could eat, but to purposely become deeply hungry? And this is my challenge for you. I call it the hunger test. You literally just don't eat when you normally would, but it allows you to actually feel what hunger feels like. And you might be saying, Jesse, you're crazy. Why would I do that? You're not going to get hurt. People fast. I've fasted for days. I know people who have fasted for more than a month, which is actually super healthy. We are so out of touch with hunger and how hunger affects us. The reason why I would do it is because when you do the hunger test, which literally just means allow yourself to feel very hungry, it allows you to experience how powerful eating food is. We have so much food around us that we don't even know how powerful it is. So here's how I would do this. I would just wake up and not eat, and then by 11, 12, 1, 2, you start getting that headache. You eat half a granola bar in like 2 minutes. You are feeling awake. Your headache is going away. You're not in a bad mood. And that was just half a granola bar. That wasn't even a meal. So I like this test. The value is to know how potent food really is. And when you learn that, you start realizing, maybe I don't need as much, especially if you're a blue. Maybe I don't need as much as I thought I did. Maybe I can shift my portions down a little bit. Now, hunger is a complicated, very intricate system. We're not going to go into all the details of how hunger works, but I'll tell you this. There's way more hormones that tell you, hey, like, let's eat, versus ones that tell you that you're full. And this is interesting because our body at a basic level just wants to survive. So it would rather overcompensate than undercompensate. So you have to know that in a way, in the society that we live in, where there's a surplus, our body is trying to live in an environment where there's a deficit, where there's, you're like hunting and gathering berries, right? So our body is very efficient with food energy. So biochemically, we have to really watch that and pay attention to how these things work so that we don't get caught under the wheel of our own hunger and our own hormonal cascades. What does sleep have to do with being hungry? A lot. And as you can see here on this chart, that not getting the right sleep affects a lot of hunger-related hormones. Leptin is what makes you feel full. That can be decreased, so less of that the next day. And ghrelin, which is getting you to eat, is increased. So on multiple levels, it's an uphill battle. Lack of sleep will raise your cortisol levels. A lot of people are familiar with cortisol in this day and age, which is a stress hormone. The GI tract also responds to cortisol. You can have an increase in cortisol the next day by 37% if you didn't have good sleep. So now my cortisol level is up over 30%. And if that's acting on my GI tract, on my stomach and intestines, I'm going to be feeling hungry just because I didn't sleep well the night before. So you hear me talking about shut off electronics 1 to 2 hours before bed. Wind down. Make yourself go to sleep. Follow circadian rhythm. And that will directly not only work on your body and like just your health from a workout and all that, but like even just nutrition. Like if that's going in the wrong direction, you are fighting an even more uphill battle, a slippery slope. What is satiation? It's when you feel full, satisfied, satiated. How does that work? Your stomach is almost elastic, or it has the ability to stretch or detect stretch. And so if you fill it with something physical and it's taking up the space, the actual tissues are now stretching. Your body is observing that and feeling that, and it's going to signal to you, hey, we're all good here. Satiation doesn't really care about how many calories are in the food. So if you fill yourself up with energy dense food, it could technically take a lot of that until you feel full. You could also fill yourself up on food that takes up space but doesn't have a lot of calories in it, and you'll still feel full but not absorb a lot of calories. So if you're a blue, that's what you want to do. If you're green, you want to do the other thing. Now we have to keep in mind some foods digest faster and some slower. So here's my tips on this. How to be satiated. That's going to prevent you from overeating. You want to fill up that space with low calorie foods, especially slow digesting foods. Get great sleep, like we saw in the chart. Actively manage cortisol, so like also becoming an awesome person to prevent yourself from being a stress ball. That's going to help you reduce weight if that's your goal and have everything operating well. Following a circadian rhythm, going to bed on time, getting up, being awake in the daylight. And we want to keep burning body fat. So if we have extra body fat, the more of that we burn through exercise and proper diet and calorie deficit, the less hunger hormones are released. Fat cells themselves release hunger hormones. So we have to be burning that body fat. We touched on nutrient-dense foods or energy-dense before. We have to keep in mind what our goals are here. If my goal is to be physically full so I don't overeat, so I can take in minimal calories but still satisfy myself, that's what a blue would do. I'm going for energy sparse foods. That's like green leafy vegetables. I have kale here, a steak, chicken. You can get into some energy dense foods or food derivatives like low fat milk instead of normal fat milk or something like that. If I'm a green, I still want some of those foods that happen to be maybe energy sparse, but I'm going to be digging into more energy dense foods as well because I'm trying to actually buff up my calorie number. And it's important not to get this backwards. A green can't do what a blue does, and a blue can't do what a green does. So our takeaways here: make sure you're getting great sleep. If you're a blue, you are focusing on high satiating foods. If you're a green, you are focusing on being satiated, but you're also keeping in mind energy density because your stomach is only so big. So you do want the extra energy in there. And we have to identify non-hunger cravings. Going back to appetites. If I'm having a craving for a specific food and I'm not even necessarily hungry, then I need to identify that and address that.